各位观众大家好，今天是星期一3月8号，在这里先祝屏幕前的女性网友节日快乐。现在不说妇女节了，说是女神节。愿我们每一位女神，在屏幕前的女神每天都快快乐乐、健健康康。现在健康比美丽更重要，所以还是祝愿大家，不管是男性的还是女性的，都在这一天祝大家有美好的一天，身体快乐。那么今天是周一，照理我们在这个现场为大家带来那个 Bc 省的最新疫情，但是声音好像轻了一点。现在已经是3点05分了。请大家稍微耐心等候一下，应该马上就会。好，音乐停了，应该已经来了。现在出场的是我们的卫生厅厅长 Andrew Dix。Good
afternoon. My name is Adrian Dix.
今天是周一，所以会给大家3个周期的时间数字的汇报。他们现在做自我介绍。
Honored to be here on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations tomorrow, Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We're providing an update with COVID-19 case numbers, at a written update. Similarly on Wednesday, we'll be providing a written update at 3 o'clock. And then on Thursday, Dr. Henry and I will be providing an in-person briefing. Dr. Henry will be updating some of the modeling and other updates on the state of the pandemic in British Columbia 1 year after a pandemic was declared by the World Health Organization. And with that, it's my honor to introduce Dr. Bonnie Henry.
关键的时候来了啊。
Thank you and good afternoon. So today we're reporting on the 3 periods over the past weekend. From Friday to Saturday, we had 545 new cases of COVID-19 diagnosed in British Columbia. From Saturday to Sunday, an additional 532 new cases. And in the last 24 hours, 385 new cases diagnosed in British Columbia. For a total of 1,462 new cases in the past 3 days, 19 of whom were epidemiologically linked cases. So that brings our total to 84,569 people in British Columbia who've been diagnosed with COVID-19. Of the new cases, 407 were people in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region, 802 are people in the Fraser Health Region, 72 people in Vancouver Island Health, 79 people live in the Interior Health Region, and 102 were in the Northern Health Region. We now have 4,854 active cases, and 240 people are in hospital, 66 of whom are in critical care or ICU. We now have over 8,723 people under active public health monitoring across the province, and 78,237 people who have passed their infectious period and recovered. Sadly, over the weekend, we had 11 people who died from COVID-19, bringing the total number of people who've died in British Columbia to 1,391 since the pandemic started. And our condolences, of course, go to the families and the care providers and our communities who've lost loved ones again this weekend. We have one new health outbreak in a long-term care home in the Interior Health in the Cottonwoods Care Center, and this is a home where all of the residents and staff had been offered immunization and a very high uptake of immunization, and some of the cases are in people who had received 2 doses of vaccine. And this serves to remind us
那么这个还是始终提醒我们就算我们对疫苗很有信心，有效率很高，但是这个对老年人对这个重症还是很有效，但是这还没有完全能够阻止我们病毒的传播因为我们社区里边病毒的传播还是很高水平，所以希望大家还是能够引起足够的重视。那么还有一个比较好的消息呢，那么又有一些长期护理院呢已经被官方宣布结束疫情那么这个呢都是对家庭和老人都是一个比较松一口气。那么还有一个儿童托护中心也宣布疫情结束现在只有10个了目前只有10个了，包括了这个协助性的独立的这些护理院
We also talk about updating on the variants of concern. There have been over the past few days 144 new COVID-19 cases that have been determined to be cases that have a variant of concern. So this brings a total of 394 people who've had the whole genome sequencing to determine that they carry one of these variants. 87 of those people are now are active cases, and the remaining are people who are no longer in their infectious period or have recovered. The majority continue to be the B117 variant that's associated with the UK. 363 cases are that, and 31 are the B1351 that's been associated with South Africa. So still a small proportion. The majority of these confirmed cases are in the Fraser Health region, where we are continuing to see the majority of transmission. So 303 are in the Fraser Health region, 74 in Vancouver Coastal Health, and 6 in both Island Health and Interior Health. The trend continues in that about a quarter of these cases we do not know exactly how they were transmitted, which tells us that these variants are some of the viruses that are being transmitted in our communities now, particularly in the Lower Mainland. On a more positive note, our vaccine update, we are continuing with the increased shipments of vaccine that we received last week and even more this week. Over 333,327 doses of COVID vaccine have been administered in BC. The majority of those now are, of course, our first doses, and we remain at about 86,925 second doses. And today, vaccine appointment bookings open for people over age 90 and for Indigenous peoples over age 65. We know that the appointments are available in multiple locations around the province starting next week, and those clinic places have been posted in all of our health authorities. And we know there has been extremely high call volumes today, and the teams are working to respond as quickly as possible. While I'm grateful to see the enthusiasm that we have, we ask everyone who's outside of the age groups for this week to please be patient and wait your turn. We know that there will be time for everybody, and everybody will get their vaccine as soon as we can arrange the appointments. Calling this week if you're outside of these first age group will not speed up your turn, but it may cause more delays for people trying to get appointments for their loved ones or for themselves who are in this first phase. We can all do our part by waiting our turn and not calling multiple times. In terms of vaccine as well, we know we have increased shipments of Pfizer that was announced on Friday. We'll be receiving more of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine in Canada and here in BC in this month of March, and that is very good news. And we are expecting our shipment of the AstraZeneca Serum Institute of India vaccine to arrive in BC in the next day or two.
那么现在呢，阿斯利康以及印度的这个同类的阿斯利康都会这个礼拜会到，所以这个礼拜都已经开始慢慢都有好消息。我相信今天的记者一定会问，既然长期护理院都武装起来了，而且那个长期护理院都很多人打了第2针，为什么还爆发？其实有疑虑啦，这个可能我会问，有详细的信息会透露出来。所以他也重点提到了我们的低卢平原这个社区的爆发的问题。那么正好是1年到现在宣布流行病全球流行病到现在了。那么我们已经在更多的程度去开放我们的这个社会，来保护大家的安全的前提下，那么所以这个。所以我们也是希望大家接下来的几个礼拜几个月，我们怎么走，我们如何再开启，都要慢慢开始考虑但是不要太急。但我们目前为止还是要对正面的面对这个病毒，要重视。那么整个夏天呢，可能又是和去年一样慢慢我相信比去年好了，因为又有疫苗了，夏天又到了这个。同时呢，他也是说到了，希望大家一定要记住，就是就算有禁令的话，一定要保证禁令的落实，就算是夏天也是。那么同时呢，就是疫苗计划已经在全面的铺开那么我天气呢也越来越暖和了可能情况会那么我们有些禁令会慢慢放松，那么有些行动可以大家活动可以开放但是希望大家我们一点都不急，我们不急我们每走一步都会小心翼翼的仔细考虑深思熟虑，所以慢慢的开放。所以现在还没有到，我们还没有完全到这个地步，只是现在给大家有一个提醒一下，给大家一个先入为主的概念我们不可能再回到疫情前的那种社交，目前为止不可能我们也同时也要相信科学，也是这个科学告诉我们这个疫苗，同时这个病毒对我们社会对地球人类的伤害严重程度，所以希望大家就是在室内的时候要戴口罩要做各种防护措施人数要少一点这些所有的这些措施还是行之有效，还是希望大家能够重视。那么他说春天夏天了之后呢，传播的这个数字或者可能会下来一点所以我们的决定都会慢慢做，但是那么接下来呢，下个礼拜呢又开始孩子们放春假了，所以希望大家能够在外聚集就在外聚集这些活动呢能够安全的，就是还是安全包括了这个孩子们的夏令营体育比赛还是要安全，人数少，还有呢各种预防措施落实到位。所以我们还是要看，包括旅行特别是3月的春季旅行我们也要看，要搞清楚希望不要过夜我们省里边大家各个去看看走走所以我们现在都没准备好，所以因为每一个社区的风险都不一样的，风险的环境都不一样，所以希望大家都重视起来这些活动所以呢同时呢也是看到体育运动也会慢慢恢复，所以一定要搞清楚，就是说不要过夜，你要出去，比如说我今天到 Whistler 去一下，那么晚上就回来那么这个呢都是我们每天也要包括了那个宗教界的领袖们也是希望能够大家能够在遵守我们这个卫生禁令的情况下召集大家做一些宗教的活动。
Again, a phased approach in the coming weeks. We know there are many important dates coming up in
我们
many
也知
days,
道很
and we
多
are
的
working on
宗
how
教
to best safely enable
接下来的
these
重要节日都
important
马
and
上到了，
critical
比如说我们都知道
celebrations
这
in
个复活
our
节
religious
Good
life to
Friday
take place.
呃
So the focus will be
周
in
五
the
叫
next
Good
few
Friday
weeks
周一
to
叫
meet
复活
both the
周
specific
周一
needs of
节，所以
different
这些都
faiths
是对基督
around
教
these
来讲都是一个
celebrations
重大
and
的
to
节日
ensure that
所以
public
希望
health
大家
measures and
能够在
safety
庆祝的时
precautions
候
remain
一
in
定要
place.
引起足够的重视，
There
采
is
取
much that we
这
can
个
look
预防
forward
措
to
施。
in the coming months
我们
as
也
we
是
look
希
ahead.
望大家
And I
能够
want to
又
take a
要
moment to
考虑到各
recognize
个因素，
what has
又要
happened over this past
能
year
够
and
安
how
全兼顾
everything that we
我
know
们也是
has
希
been
望大家
changed in so
过
many
去的这
ways.
些
This
传统
past
的
year
做法
has
都变
challenged
了，
us
希望
all.
大家能够
And we've
改
learned
变
that
自己
we are
我知道
stronger
这些
and
都是
far
很
more
困难，对
resilient
大家
by
来讲都是
supporting
挑战
and，
但是希望
encouraging
大
each
家慢慢
other along
希
the
望
way.
大家相互支持，
Today,
相互
as
鼓
we
励。
celebrate International Women's
那
Day,
么今天呢是
I
38
also
妇
want to
女节，
recognize
国
the
际妇
many,
女
many
节
women who have
我也
been
是在这里
instrumental
呢给
in
大
our
家每一
COVID-19
个
response here in
美
BC
妇
and
女，特
across
别
the
是在我们
country and the
BC
world.
省的这个
Particularly
工
my
作在
public health
前线的
colleagues here
应
in
对
British
新冠
Columbia and
病
across
毒
the
的
country,
我们的
but
同事
also
们
the
在
mothers,
这
the
里
sisters,
还有
the
包括母
aunties
亲
and
们、姐
daughters
妹们
who are making
或者
a
女儿
difference
们
every day
也是
at
你
work,
们每
at
天的工
home,
作
in their
每一
communities,
天的点努
across
力，
this
使得我们
province.
每天都不
We
一
know
样
this pandemic
不管
has
是在
been
家里
hard
还是
on
在
so
上班
many.
的地方
But let's
我
keep
们这
building
个
this
使得
momentum
这个
that we have
虽然
gained
这个
and
全球流行病
continue to
给
do
大
our
家造成
part
困难，但是
to
我
keep
们每
each
天
other
都
safe
能
and
够
put this
团结在一
pandemic
起
behind us.
共同的
And
面
I
对这
am
个
in
困难
awe
所以
of
也
all
是所
that
以
people
也
are
是
doing
给
and
庆祝
grateful
也
for
是
the
祝大
work
家
that
节
we've
日快
seen.
乐。
And let's continue
所以我
on
们
our
希望
path
继续
together.
的能
And
够
as
还是他
I
的这
heard
个
the other
著
day
名
from
的
a knowledge keeper on the BC Association for First Nations call, we had Robert Joseph,
那
a
么
very
Robert
wise
Joseph 那么
man,
也是
said
第
we
一
will
第一原
celebrate
住
our
民
lives
的，也是
again,
一
dream
个
our dreams again, and watch our
他
children
是说
regain
了一
their
个我
hope.
们原住
And
民有
that's
一个
what we can
Joseph
look
的一
forward
个
to in
名
the coming
言
months.
那么也是
But let's also continue to be kind to each
也
other,
是
to
continue
be
to be kind
calm,
to each other
and to stay
我是
safe.
觉得伯尼医生的讲话讲得特别好，真的，小动之以情，晓之以理。我是看来是他的粉丝啊，也有人说我可能是他每天看他的被他洗脑了，也有可能这个就是他个人的魅力。每次听他的讲话，都觉得有一种 emotional， 他是让你这个细雨润物这样。那么他作为卫生厅长呢，也是代表省长，在过去的3天里边死亡的11个人一个家人亲属表示哀悼。这个也是表示他们那么他也是说了这个我再把数字说一下啊，周5到周6是545新增，周6到周日新增532，周日到周1新增385。我不认为这个385表明现在已经降低，我个人认为只是因为时间点截取点不一样，所以3天是1462例，其实平均也是要400多例了啊。那么
say that 333,327 doses administered.
那么他也是说到了，就是333327个人那么已经打了第一针了。那么86925人呢，已经打了第二针这个的确速度比美国差远了，但是比之前的这个增长疫苗施打的增长速度是的确快多了。这个我们也是实事求是讲，因为我每次都做记录啊。那么2月23号都是，也就是一周前多一点，也就是28万，现在33万啊。
because it was done at all long-term care homes.
那么现在，他们长期护理院可能现在又回到了第二阶段。我记了一下，2月16号是17万，现在呢，到了3月8号，几乎增加了1倍，33万。
With respect to today, I want to say a couple of things. First of all,
你看啊，2月23号是28万，3月2号才28万3000，其实继续增加了3000，那时候特别困难。到了3月4号，马上就是29万一天就是1万多了之后，那么3月4号到现在，3月8号4天打了5万针了也是这样。 那么现在呢，他说是90岁以上，原住民呢是65岁以上。这个大屏幕大家看到了，现在可以去预约了。我个人呢也是收到了我们家庭医生诊所发来的邮件，说只要你是符合这个年龄的，就可以去预约。说明他们的工作还是做的比较细。当然，我不是这个年龄啊，我也不希望我这个年龄，我也不希望我们在座的很多网友没有我没有这个歧视年龄的这个，我是只是希望大家都年轻。我上次有一次在跟朋友说，我说我希望我认识的朋友都落在8月份、9月份能够施打疫苗的这个年龄段，只是一个美好的祝愿而已。
We've got an extraordinary amount of public interest in the first hours, in the first morning, 1.7
那么他也是说到了这个电话量太大预约的这个几乎是举报。所以他们也是在不断的扩容，也是增加这个 call center 叫呼叫中心的这个工作。那么现在呢，还是要让这个年纪大的老年人年龄阶段先让他们先打，这个很重要。
We're going to have more and more people eligible to call in. There are
所以每个星期都会不一样就每这个礼拜这个是90岁以上，下个礼拜就是85岁以上了，可能就是这样。我们不会越来越少，我们只会给越来越多的疫苗给人打。希望也大家就是说，你符合这个年龄段的，你才来打电话预约没有符合呢，不要再打了。刚才伯尼医生说multiple calls， 看来很多人是打了好几次电话了，所以他说我们都理解你的心情得到疫苗的心情，但是呢，也是请你也理解我们的工作量也要理解要让这个更多的老年人优先次序先打我也感谢大家也是感谢大家，就算你打电话来也来预约都是好事情我认识一个邻居。她是94岁的老太太了，我这2天我今天也要打电话去提醒她，但我相信她已经得到了社区或者是家庭医生的通知。那么他说我们每天新增数字还是这么高你看这个差不多是要1500了，这个过去的3天，所以这个还是很高所以我是希望大家用这个自己的心我们每天也要做这些该做的工作，该做的我们基本的义务都要做。希望大家能够遵循我们的卫生警令也是我们的基本的这个卫生行为准则。
of our continuing obligation to use our skills and adhere to the guidance and orders that keep us healthy. Our hopes for post-pandemic freedom do not preclude our immediate and ongoing need to act to save lives. This is no time to drift from no stops the spread, keeps us healthy, and saves lives. A better future is the truest test of our commitment today. So staying 100% all in on our fight right now is the safest and fastest path to our realizing the full potential of future days. I want to say finally to all of the women working in healthcare, we are very fortunate in BC that the presidents and CEOs of our regional health authorities are all women. We have an extraordinary team. Many of the majority of our women in public health as well.
都有专业，都权威，而且每天都是格外了不起，他们做的了不起的工作，包括我们的公卫系统的工作人员部署在全省都是数万人，成千上万的都是，特别是那些妇女在这次疫情期间在这1年来特别是做出了艰辛的努力他们是在不管是在哪里今天又是国际妇女节所以也是感谢他们，你们所做的 都是给了我们很多人的鼓
Aujourd'hui, nous
舞
faisons le
啊。
point
他
sur le
又
nombre
说
de nouveaux
法
cas
语了。
pour 3
今
périodes
天
de
照例星
référence
期
de
一，他
24 heures
会
chacune,
给大家
soit
汇报一
celle
下
du 5
这
et
个
6 mars,
PPE 啊，
celle
就
du
是我们
6
省
et 7
的这
mars
个
et celle du 7
个人
jusqu'au
防护
8
服啊，
mars
以
en
及防
mi-journée.
护设备的
Il
获
y a eu
得、物
11
资
nouveaux
获得情
décès
况。
liés au Covid-19 durant ces périodes de
他现在说的是
référence.
法语。
Pour la première période de référence, qui s'étend jusqu'au 6 mars, nous avons eu 545 nouveaux cas. Pour la deuxième période de référence, qui s'étend jusqu'au 7 mars, nous avons eu 532 nouveaux cas. Au cours des dernières 24 heures, 385 nouveaux cas se sont ajoutés. Je veux donner mes condoléances, enfin mes condoléances aux familles et aux amis des gens des personnes décédées de Covid-19 en Colombie-Britannique. 1391 jusqu'aujourd'hui. Et à tous ceux qui ont perdu des êtres chers au cours de cette pandémie. Parmi l'ensemble des cas confirmés de Covid-19, 240 personnes sont actuellement hospitalisées, dont 66 en soins intensifs. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. As a reminder to everybody on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question and one follow-up. I would also ask that you please remove yourselves from mute. You're not audible till I call your name. First question today is from Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Thank you, Minister, and I definitely appreciate you saying that the government is going to fix sort of the backlogs in the system. Can you say specifically how you're going to do that? Will you be hiring more staff?
也就是说到了这个问题啊，也就是因为刚刚开很多人挤爆了这个预约，你们政府怎么做？会不会雇佣新的人？更多的人？那么他说有些呢是技术问题，因为突然之间，我觉得这个女记者提的问题有点外行了。我不是说我为了应付短时间的打爆量，我再雇佣2个人，结果过来的人呢又工作量不够了，因为你只有这些人，无非呢就是这段时间突然之间打进来，而且这个跟人多人少没关系，因为这个电话线就这几门这个他说我们也是尽量的做在这个系统里面改善，使得我们的这个效率更加提高。我觉得这个问题呢，说实话，我保留意见，好吧
？For I think all of our people, particularly people over 90, people over 65 and their families, it's a solemn act.
那么又是说到了90岁以上的人，请大家90岁以上的人再去打啊，就这个意思。
People over 90 in BC, almost 20,000 have already been vaccinated, and a significant number, of course, and many thousands received their appointments today. But I think as we go along, we're simply going to have to respond better because every time we go through a new category of person, there's going to be more people in that category. And once we get to the point where the online tool
其实他们也会预料到，每一次开放一个年龄段，一开始一定会变化很多，之后会慢慢平缓，这个是很正常的。就像现在是对90岁以上的人开放，下礼拜是对80岁以上的开放，那第一天、第二天一定会很多人，因为大家都急着要打这个电话，所以一定是这个情况。
Could navigate the online system like what's happening in the Fraser Health. So could the online option be added quicker to these?
那么他说，现在这个飞沙卫生局能网上在做，很多人很开心啊，都会为父母自己在做这个预约。那么其他的卫生局什么时候能够加上这个好处、便民措施
？System for April, it was not possible. Obviously, we wanted it to be ready for weeks ago, but it does take time to get those things together. And Fraser Health was the only health authority that had that type of an online booking system that was robust enough at this point.
那么现在因为只有飞沙卫生局呢有现有的这个网上的预约的系统，那么其他呢都在积极在加入这个系统。
Charged with working on this needs to step up as well, as well as the health authorities, and it will get better. But the challenge we have is that we don't have a system that allowed us to do this seamlessly that was pre-built, and it's unfortunately something that we're seeing across the country, and hopefully this will be a legacy system that will allow us to do a lot more in the future.
And Fraser Health has a system in place that a significant number of people were able to book appointments on today, and that was something they built out as part of their testing process last summer. And the overall system platform will be ready for the launch of Phase 3 on April the 12th. And in the meantime, where our expectation is that our call center system will respond well to people, and that means calling only when you're able to book an appointment, in this case seniors 90 and above, and Indigenous people 65 and above on the one hand, but on the other hand, absolutely, we need to respond more quickly and better to people's calls, and that's already happening through the day, but it's our expectation this week that it'll get better every single day.
Next question is from Richard Sisman, Global News.
I'd like to change gears for a moment here. Dr. Henry, you mentioned International Women's Day and the important role that women are playing in our pandemic.
又说到妇女问题了啊，说妇女在这个我们抗击病毒的这个工作中的重要贡献。
Many women are a key part to guiding us through the pandemic, and do you see this trend as one in the right direction where gender equality in sciences is concerned?
Absolutely. I hope that that seeing strong women leaders that we have seen around the world and here in Canada is an inspiration to young women and girls everywhere, that they see themselves in science, technology, engineering, math, and arts and all of the other important parts of our learning and our environment. But I think this has been, I am in awe of my colleagues here in BC and across the country and their ability to talk to people about the science, about the epidemiology, about all of these things that we're learning about along the way. And the fact that this year has been full of that, I hope is an inspiration. I will also say, though, that we know that this pandemic has not affected people equally, and we know that it has differentially, negatively impacted women in many different job areas, that the women are more likely to have lost income, to be at home, to taking over the roles of caregiver and teacher, and it's been very, very challenging for women. So I think we need to not lose sight that as we get through this pandemic and we start to look at our processes again, that we are able to address some of the inequities that the pandemic has shown us, not only for women but for racialized women. And we see that in healthcare, we see that across the board in people who are more negatively affected than others.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Back to the overall picture of the pandemic. You mentioned that we're going to start easing things in a few weeks' time, and we're hearing light at the end of the tunnel on the vaccine. Are you worried that sort of looking forward with positivity is actually having the reverse effect, and people are easing their own restrictions sooner because of that, and that's leading to this recent spike in cases we've seen?
I think we're all at that point where we're frustrated. We want things to be better, and the reality is they are going to get better. And I think at this point, having that vision and that hope of where we're going is something that we all need. And right now, the focus that we need to be is to focus on those things that we can now do safely. And being outside is another important one. We talked about trying to get outdoors every day, but recognizing that we're going into March break or school break, and it's the opportunity now to do that safely with young people.
那么也是说到了对延期期的人来讲啊，也是你们更加要注意。现在因为春假了，春假要到了，但是呢天气又开始热了，所以希望大家呢出来玩的时候呢，你们一定要人数少一点，同时呢要注意安全这个要安全的玩大家聚集在一起，这个也是能够在室外就在室外，大家社交，所以希望大家能够仔细、安全、小心。就算是疫苗马上来了，很多来了，但是还是大家不要冒这个风险。我们不要再走得太远，不要走得太快。
Next question is from Shannon Patterson, CTV.
Oh, hi, guys. We'll start with Minister Dix. At your 10 a.m. press conference, you said you'd have information on the number of appointments that have been booked by this press conference, by 3 o'clock. So how many of those 80,000 or so seniors that are eligible starting now have booked their
好，
appointments?
这位记者
And
问得
also,
很
can you
好
give us a。more
到目前
up-to-date
为
number
止
of，
有多少
calls
人
on the
有
line? You
资
said
格
by 10 a.m. it was
符合条
1.7
件来
million. Can
预
you give
约
us a sense of where we
那么
are
已
now?
经有多少人预约了？到目前为止，能不能说一下因为你刚才说的是早上10点那么他说看一看他数据要拿出来了。
So as I noted, of the roughly 80,000 that are eligible to get
大
appointments
约
in
有
these
8万
categories,
人符合这
roughly
个
in
我
the
们 BC
neighborhood
省
of 26,000
养老院
already
不算
received
这
them,
个
so that reduces the number.
已经是8万
It's
人
my
左右。
understanding that about 10,000 appointments have been booked to date.
但我已经知道有1万人已经
A significant number
预
of
约了。
those through Fraser Health's online site, as you'll know, and so that's about the number. And on the latter number, what we'll try and do is include that in the statement shortly, because as you know, it's building up through the day. But I think the 1.7 million in the morning gives you a sense of the sheer volume of calls we are facing. So those numbers will be available, and we'll continue to have updates through the week.
Follow-up, Shannon?
Yeah, you probably saw, Dr. Henry, that the U.S. CDC has released long-awaited guidelines on how fully vaccinated people can safely visit others. They're saying that 2 vaccinated people can be indoors without masks. They're saying that they could even, in some circumstances, meet with unvaccinated people. So what do you think of their recommendations? And when can we expect guidance here? People really want to know when they can visit with, say, their parents and grandparents once the seniors have gotten their first dose of vaccine.
And I think that is, I did see what the U.S. CDC has put out. I think those are fairly reasonable guidelines, and I think ours will be very similar when we're, however, we don't need to wait until everybody has their second dose. And we do need to continue to pay attention to people who are more at risk of having severe illness from this virus or ending up in hospital. And right now, we're not at that point where we have enough of the people who are at risk immunized that we can have overall guidance, but we're taking those things into account in terms of visitation to long-term care. And it does mean that when you're out in public, when you're out in communal settings like that, where there are people who are still at risk, even if they have been immunized, we need to continue to wear masks to ensure that we're using all the proper precautions so that we're not putting people at risk when there's still so much transmission in our community right now. But I think that's a very good example of what we can look forward to as more people are protected, particularly more of our seniors and elders in the coming months.
不等于你不传染，只有等大家都打了就可以了。这个是很正常的。
Hi, Dr. Henry. I guess my question is sort of related. I'm wondering about specifically the example you mentioned about a long-term care facility where everyone had received their vaccines.
又说到了长期护理院的每一个人是不是都打了疫苗？还有一个爆发我想知道。
People have also been questioning
我肯定知道这个肯定一定有人问。
long-term care homes, they've had their vaccine in January.
那么有些人都是1月份就打了，现在都是打第2针了，为什么？ 那么还有为什么很多的长期护理院不开呢？因为都打了第1针，有些老人都打了第2针了。
They're wondering, is there ever going to be a time when sort of a normal like visit can happen at these long-term care homes, given that the people who can be vaccinated have been vaccinated?
And the short answer is yes, it's coming, but it's coming in a measured way as in the next little while as the rates in our community go down, and as more people are protected. So we still know that people who visit people in long-term care are they themselves sometimes at risk. So we want to make sure we have as many people as possible. But yes, you can continue to have transmission even when people are fully vaccinated, so several weeks after 2 doses in this case. However, we are now watching very carefully, because what we've seen in other parts of the country and in the US is that the illness is milder and doesn't transmit as much, so we don't expect and hope we won't see those rapidly explosive outbreaks that we've seen in long-term care homes. So those are the types types of things that we'll be watching really carefully. But right now, because there's still so much transmission, we're not at the point where we can just open up care homes, because that still puts people at risk. But we are working on those guidelines, and I have committed by the end of this month we will have new guidance, even before that if we can, that will allow for increased visits with our loved ones in long-term care.
Follow-up, Jane?
Yes, my follow-up is about a different group, which so far hasn't really been addressed in the vaccine plan, which is children and teens. As we know, I think one of the vaccines is approved for people up to down to 16, and there's trials in place for 12 and over, I think, with one of them, but there's still a significant portion of the population in BC that falls into that category. So where does that leave families, children, teens, say after July this summer, when the adults have been vaccinated, but the children and teens haven't, especially given that the kids have had a lot of their activities restricted, they've had their sports and social lives restricted. When do they get to have some kind of normal life, and how will families navigate that when adults have been vaccinated and children haven't been?
Yeah, all very good questions, and I don't have all the answers yet, because we're still working things out and trying to understand them. But we know that for the most part, young people don't have a severe illness, so that's good news. That means that we have more leeway, even if they are transmitting, to be able to have more activities sooner and not have as great a risk. I'm not saying no risk. We know that some children do have severe disease. We know that some of them end up with long-term complications. So what we need to do, and the aim of the program is to reduce the amount of transmission in our communities so that we can have all of our activities safely come back to normal-ish. And I say that because it's likely we're going to be dealing with this virus for many, many more months, even years. But if we can prevent people from getting severely ill, prevent hospitalizations and deaths, that is how we can manage the pandemic piece and get back into activities. But as you say, as we've said all along, we are learning a lot as we go, and that includes about vaccines and about how well they work. And when the vaccines are started, the focus was to develop a vaccine that would work in those who are most at risk. So for many other diseases that affect children more so than adults, the vaccine development is focused on preventing illness in children. And I was struck just last week, I happened to be in the legislative library, and it was open to a page from April of 1955, when the polio vaccine was approved for use for the first time in this country. And the headline was "Vaccine for All by the end of the year." And the analogies with what we're going through right now just really struck me, because it was the same information about how well it protected children who were at risk and how it prevented them from ending up in hospital or dying from polio. And I know my mother and her generation, this was just an amazing change for them, because they could get through the summer without losing their friends to polio. I think we need to think about this in the same way. These vaccines are new. We're finding out that they work, and they work in the people who are most affected by COVID-19, and that's our seniors and elders. And we're now moving to test it in younger people, and it's likely to be the end of the year before we'll have more data around the vaccination in younger people. But in the meantime, if we can get enough of our adult population and those high-risk settings under control, so making sure that we protect the adults in the school system, and that we have some measures in place to reduce transmission in schools. But it will look different, and we are looking at, I think school, I can say with some confidence that school for K-12 will look much more normal by next September, because the risks in our community will be decreased by the immunization program. And same for universities. I think we need to start planning that full back into
过去暑假过去都是可以基本上恢复正常也是看到孩子们能够在校园里边可以开展更多的活动，但是这个还是需要时间。我们还需要戴口罩在特殊的场合。
Particularly for somebody who's at risk, and we've seen these measures work for influenza, and I suspect we'll be adding COVID in some way or the other to the types of settings that we'll need to pay attention to. But I fully expect we'll get to a post-pandemic way of looking at that by this summer, and of course we'll never have to stop washing our hands.
Marcella Bernardo, News 1130.
我们要如何去适应，如何去改变自己。
Henry and Minister Dix, I'm not sure which one of you can answer this because it's something that's been coming up this morning with call centers being overloaded.
又是说到了今天早上这个呼叫中心被挤爆的问题。
How are you, or what checks and balances are being taken to stop people from cheating the system and
他说你们如何采取措施让他们去不要那个欺骗这个系统来早点获得疫苗这个是好问题。我们这个系统设计都是以人为本，诚信为本。
I think there's some very basic things. I think we know that the vast majority of people
我们的大多数人，绝大多数人都能够理解我们现在如何面对的困难是给谁做
everybody who's in BC.
每一个人在 BC 省不管你有没有不管你有没有护照这个签证你都可以在接下来礼拜都可以打疫苗。这个是好，也就是说没有 MSP 都可以打了。
I think
这个卫生厅长再说一下。
people calling into our call centers do have a personal health number, and if their age is if they're born not born in 1931 or before. This week they won't be able to book an appointment. Similarly,
这个礼拜是1930年之前生的人可以打。
So I think we have ways in a general sense to control that, and we will.
我们只是有了这个年龄限制，主要是为了限制流量
I just want to remind everybody this week who is eligible this week to book appointments that they have a number of days to do it. You won't lose a place in line. There's lots of vaccine to address
请大家知道这个我们会有很多足够多的疫苗会来，你不会没有位置来打，我们不会给你打的所以现在还是这个礼拜主要是90岁以上和严重的60岁以上希望大家来预约。
following public health orders, I think for all those people who are following it is irritating, and I'm not saying there won't be any of those cases, but I do believe they'll be relatively few and far between, mainly because we have a community in BC that's been incredibly committed to working together to deal with the pandemic on the one hand, and on the other hand we have some controls to make sure that doesn't happen.
Follow up, Marcella?
I do, and it's regarding faith services and church leaders hoping that they might be able to get back to somewhat of a normal existence in time for Easter and Passover and other religious ceremonies happening in the springtime. I heard you earlier suggest that this is possible, so could we see people being able to sit in pews at their church for Easter?
That is our goal, and we are working closely with our community of faith leaders, and I really I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Dom, who's been leading a really great understanding with people, and it's really helped us see the issues that people are dealing with, and the tenets of certain different faiths and different ceremonies, and how important that they're not all the same. And I've heard that for some people a funeral involves X number of people doing certain important parts of the ceremony, and so we are looking at how we can make sure all of the important celebrations that are coming up, Easter being one of them, Passover as you mentioned, and we know that Ramadan and Zaki are coming up, and how do we make sure that people can celebrate those safely? And yes, that's our That's our plan. My only qualifier is, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We're in the last miles of this marathon. Yes, but we still have a lot of transmission in our communities, so we want to make sure it's a careful and thoughtful phased approach. So it may not be what Easter celebrations have been in the past, but they will be celebrations, and unless things go off the rails, we are planning for them to be in person.
We have time for one more question this afternoon. For everyone listening, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will release a statement this afternoon with the latest information on cases, hospitalizations, and outbreaks, which you can find at news.gov.bc.ca. For updated province-wide restrictions, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID restrictions. And for information about the province's orders and pandemic supports, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID-19. Last question today is from Tanya Fletcher, CBC.
The rollout plan last week suggested people could book today for appointments starting next week on the 15th. But we're hearing about seniors, 90 plus, getting appointments, calling for appointments today and getting appointments today. So did something change to put the rollout ahead of schedule?
It's more availability. We've been working really hard to get the clinics set up. Right now, it varies around the province about who's going into the clinics. So some of them now are for healthcare workers, and so if there's places available, those spaces are being filled. But they'll be at full strength by next week and focused on the priority populations and our seniors and elders.
主要是冰箱了，很多的冰箱需要辉瑞医药、辉瑞那个疫苗，主要是一个特制的冰箱。那么他也是说到了这个。
appointments in their own homes or in other circumstances. So that's happening.
那么不是所有的网友啊，从一开始就看我们的这个直播。在过去的3天里边，周5到周6新增了545例，周6到周日是新增了532例，周日到周一今天是385例，3天一共新增了1462例。那么 BC 省总数就到达了84569例。那其中呢，这个3天里边，沿岸卫生局新增了407例，那个飞沙卫生局新增了802例，岛上卫生局新增了72例，这个内陆卫生局新增了79例。北部卫生局3天新增了102例。
Several weeks ago, you said 500 cases a day was too high a daily rate to maintain, but that's where we've stayed for quite a while now. You've clearly today been laying the groundwork for easing restrictions in the coming weeks. So are we to assume we will not see any extra or at least targeted restrictions to curb our caseload until then, despite the case count still high?
他说：“你说500例新增都是很多，为什么你今天又说开始考虑放松禁令了？你又是怎么考虑的？”那么他说：“我们考虑的几个因素，一个是我们的公卫系统的应对。”
Of the case management, the contact tracing, getting on top of those outbreaks, those cases, and trying to prevent those super spreading events. So yes, I was more concerned a month ago for a couple of reasons. One, because we had not yet been able to provide vaccine to all of our long-term care homes, and we knew the tragedy that ensues if the virus gets into care homes. But also we were just starting to understand the impact and the extent of variants of concern and whether they would cause a dramatic takeoff as had been shown in some of the modeling, etc. And we're not out of that woods yet, but we know a lot more about how many cases are these variants, where they're occurring, and that our public health measures to manage cases and contacts and all of the testing we're doing around people with variant cases has shown that what we're doing is working to prevent rapid takeoff and transmission.
效的方法看这目前为止还是有效的，如何阻止这个病毒。但是呢，我们对变异病毒知道的还不多，所以这个我是还很小心翼翼，还谨慎。
But I have still concerns. It wakes me up at night worrying about. We have a lot of transmission in our community still, and it comes in focal places. We know that most people don't transmit to anybody else, but some people can transmit to large numbers, and it is when we have people who are in situations where they can transmit to a large number of people that we see this take off and we get these explosions in communities. And right now we're seeing it in Prince Rupert, for example. We've seen it in communities in different parts of the province. We've seen it in workplaces. And we saw it related to the unfortunate pub trivia night. So we can't let those types of situations get us off track right now. And that's why I'm cautiously optimistic, but as we now have more vaccines, we're able to protect more people. We're targeting some of the workplaces and other places where we're seeing transmission that spills into the community. The only other thing I'd say is events like St. Patrick's Day, which we know can be a concerning event, and I was thinking back to St. Patrick's Day last year where we had to close down some of the entertainment districts and pubs, etc. So those are the types of things that can put us off the rails. So we still need to pay attention. But yes, I am much more optimistic that we're keeping it low and steady, and that if we continue to do that, we'll hopefully get things going down as more people are protected, and we'll prevent that from taking off. So if we do start seeing cases take off, unfortunately, then we will have to impose restrictions, and I don't want to do that. I want us to be moving towards the light.
这个是我不希望看到的啊。今天这个伯尼医生就说的谨慎乐观啊，因为刚才说的这些因素，一对病毒的了解更多，二这个很多的措施现在证明有效，包括他们的疫情控制啊，跟踪接触工作，包括了这个它叫疫苗的管理吧，反正就是这些，所以呢，疫苗的分发也是多了，所以呢，他们是谨慎的乐观，所以考虑接下来如果数字是稳定的，或者是在下降了，那么就要考虑放松疫情。那么，但是如果这个数字还下降不了，那很遗憾不会放松啊。那么我再继续。那么在过去的3天里边呢，沿岸卫生局新增了407，菲沙卫生局新增了802例，内陆岛上卫生局新增了72例，内陆卫生局新增了79例，北部卫生局是新增了162例，这个是很厉害，102例说错了。那么目前为止呢，现在是240个人还在住院，其中66个在重症监护。那么在过去的3天里边，新增11例死亡，现在到了1391例。在这个变异病毒方面，新增了144例，现在累计总数到了394例。那他说呢，目前 active 的是87例，当然其中也记录到有几例住院以及几例死亡。在这个394例累计的变异病毒里边，363例还是英国病毒，剩余的全是南非病毒。但是令人焦虑的，他说还是有1/4的阳性案例，还是没有找到哪里获得的病毒，就是来源不知道，这是他才顾虑的。那么到今天为止，目前为止啊，不能说是他也没说是，应该是 up to date， 今天是333327个人获得了疫苗，其中86925个。是获得了第2例疫苗啊，这个就是各位观众今天的这个 BC 省的新冠病毒新闻简报，新冠疫情。